Now, Walz is weird, but he disguises it under the costume of phony compassion, a fake politician who masks destructive ideas under the guise of empathy. At a 2017 town hall, he implied 10-year-old boys should be able to invade girls' bathrooms because it's all about...
Tim Walz is now saying about Trump supporters, and forgive me, I'm just reading a quote from Tim Walz, I think I could kick most of their ass.
Oh boy, he'd be in trouble.
Is there any way to know?
Well, he's a loser. You know, I mean, the guy's a loser.
Think you've got the story figured out? Think again. Because this political disaster took a sharp turn straight into crazy town. Greg Gutfeld joined forces with Donald Trump. Yep, that duo. To totally roast Tim Walz like it was a 4th of July cookout. 1 minute Walz is delivering speeches, the next he's twisting words, trying to dodge burning sarcasm and ego bombs. What triggered the showdown? Why is Minnesota all of a sudden buzzing? Spoiler alert, it's way more cringeworthy than karaoke night at Mar-a-Lago.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there!" and then ran away.
I think I would have won. Susie would say I would have won Pennsylvania easily anyway, even if the governor ran, the real governor, not the governor from Minnesota, he's a sick puppy, that guy. That poor guy, I feel sorry for him. But they made a bad choice with him.
They say leadership is about having vision, but Tim Walz must have misread that and thought it said television, because that's the only screen he seems interested in. Preferably the one showing his next awkward press conference where he blames gravity, sunlight, and probably Greg Gutfeld for his latest mess. The guy runs Minnesota like it's a Sims game with all the disasters switched on and no cheat codes. If you thought potholes were bad, just wait until you see his policies. Deep, unavoidable, and perfectly placed to wreck everything.
With Walz, it's hard to even bring him up. He has a resting snitch face. You know? He forfeited his man card during COVID and the riots. And you're right. And also, at that diner, of course, he left early. So don't you find it weird that for a terrifying threat to democracy that Trump is, not a single interviewer in his history has approached him with...
With Minnesota stuck in fear under Walz, it's become the political version of a frozen casserole left in the back of the fridge since 2020, dull, outdated, and kinda radioactive. But don't worry, he's serving it up again with a fresh helping of excuses. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld, armed with the sarcasm of a hyperactive raccoon, and Trump, wielding the subtlety of a wrecking ball tied to a monster truck, teamed up to roast this walking press release.
Yeah, this one's a clue. We saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear.
Gutfeld didn't even need to prepare. The material writes itself when you've got a guy who locked down a state so tight during the pandemic that even Wi-Fi signals had to quarantine. You'd think with all that executive power, he'd have managed to fix something, anything. But nope. Roads still look like the surface of the moon. Taxes are so high they get nosebleeds, and don't even get me started on crime. Minneapolis under Walz turned into a real-life GTA server with less accountability and worse graphics.
I'm especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed, correct?
And what's his answer? More money for committees, studies, and advisory boards. Like political duct tape for issues that actually need real solutions. His game plan is basically, if I just ignore it long enough, maybe it'll unionize and demand a raise.
Alright. people misreading Tim's odd greeting. The man of the hour, Tim Walz, brings us our second video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh yeah, weird.
Then Trump shows up like the chaotic wild card energy Minnesota never asked for but definitely got. He glances at Walz's track record and laughs like someone just handed him a participation trophy for the most ineffective leader in the Midwest. Trump may have his own pile of scandals, but next to Walz, he looks like Churchill rocking a MAGA hat. At least Trump does something, even if it's wildly controversial, sometimes confusing, and always shouted in all caps. Walz, on the other hand, is the master of doing nothing. He runs the state like a substitute teacher on autopilot. A lot of talking, zero control. The only thing moving in Minnesota is businesses and residents packing up U-Hauls like it's a reverse Oregon Trail. You don't die of dysentery here, you go broke thanks to progressive policies. Speaking of businesses, under Timmy's rule, Minnesota became the spot where companies get buried under so many regulations, they start missing California. One small business owner tried to open a lemonade stand and ended up needing a zoning permit, a carbon offset plan, and a 12-step environmental audit. All for selling citrus. And education? You'd think a former teacher would know how to run a school system. Instead, he's turned classrooms into political correctness labs, where algebra is optional but pronoun quizzes are mandatory. The only thing climbing on test scores is the confusion level.
I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz.
Meanwhile, Trump stands there with his arms crossed, watching Walz stumble through press conferences like a dad trying to set up Wi-Fi. And Gutfeld? He's basically having the time of his life, turning Walz into a punchline that practically writes itself. Gutfeld once joked that watching Tim Walz try to lead is like watching a squirrel drive a forklift, cute until you realize the damage is permanent. The only thing Walz seems to lead confidently is a non-stop parade of contradictions. He'll announce bold climate plans right before hopping into a state-issued SUV that drinks gas like a jet engine. He champions workers' rights until union members ask for accountability, then suddenly it's not the right time. Translation: I didn't expect you to actually ask for anything. And we can't forget the theatrical mess that was his pandemic policy. 1 minute, Walz is preaching follow the science like it's gospel. The next, he's ordering bars to close at 10 p.m., as if COVID suddenly decides to stop partying and infecting people after that. Genius. Trump couldn't resist mocking him. Walz put in a rule where gyms had to close but liquor stores stayed open, which says everything you need to know about Minnesota's idea of public health. Less fitness, more forget it.
On Minnesota, there were a lot of horrific details that came out today about the suspect who's been charged there. Have you called the governor yet or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't really call him. I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, you damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute them.
So, wait, you lost because you weren't woke enough? That's like telling Joy Behar she's not eating enough Doritos. That's like Jasmine Crockett saying, I gotta black this up.
And through it all, Walz still manages to keep a straight face, like a guy who genuinely believes no one's noticed the whole house is burning down. Every time someone brings up crime in Minneapolis, he talks about community engagement like he's pitching a yoga class to a SWAT team. Meanwhile, people are downloading crime apps like they're the latest Netflix hit. His economic plans? More like plans to leave the economy stuck in the basement with a leaking pipe labeled tax policy. He wants to raise taxes on the wealthy, which in Minnesota basically means anyone who managed to pay rent last month. Greg Gutfeld isn't just roasting him, he's grilling Walz like it's July 4th and Walz showed up wearing a shirt that says, "I banned fireworks." There's something almost cosmic about watching two loudmouths like Gutfeld and Trump come together on one thing: their shared disbelief that someone like Tim Walz is still in office. And somehow, the more heat he takes, the more Walz doubles down like a blackjack player on a losing streak. You criticize his budget, he throws more money at the problem. You question his handling of law enforcement, he throws a slogan at it. He probably thinks public safety can be fixed with motivational posters. Speaking of law enforcement, remember when Minneapolis wanted to rethink policing? That was Walz's chance to say, hey, maybe don't dismantle the entire police force during a crime wave. But instead, he danced around it like a dad scared to say no to his toddler. The result? Chaos, confusion, and a spike in crime that would make Gotham City look tame.